Plain Truth, the show where we try to get into some of the mysteries and dirty underbelly of the world around us. I'm your host, Paul, and joining me this week is Turd Ferguson. Turd, are you there?
I sure am, Paul. Always good to visit with you.
Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. And along for the ride is my friend Jerry. Jerry, are you there?
Hey, guys. Hey, Turd.
Hi, Jerry.
Well, Turd, it's been a while since you've been here. It's been a really uneventful year, right? I mean, not much has been happening. But what do you think's been going on lately that's caught your eye last month or so?
Oh, it really has been interesting. And boy, where do you start? Whether
Exactly.
it's geopolitically and everything that's going on in Eastern Europe or in the Middle East, whether it's macro economy. Gosh, you've got just this week and actually the last couple of weeks, all the bank stocks in Europe just going in the toilet. Wonder if that's not a precursor of a new crisis. You've got the U.S. economy actually contracting by 3% in the first quarter, and we're supposed to believe that that's all just
before the numbers got cooked, right? Or you know what I mean? So it's really like twice as bad.
Exactly. I mean, even in their admitted numbers, it's negative 3%, and that's just astounding. And of course, that's all just because it was cold for a few weeks in the Northeast. But we've had an interesting first 6 months of the year in the metals. They have been really heinously capped. Very aggressive efforts by the bullion banks to restrain price here to the extent where it leaves me scratching my head. What are they worried about? I mean, why are they so concerned in attempting to keep silver down below 22 and gold here at 1340? And what I mean by that is that the amount of paper metal that they are creating is astounding, and we can go into that in a minute. If you'd like, why they are choosing to do it with price this low, like I said, really leaves you scratching your head. So there's just, gosh, you put it all together, and I mean, there's just so much going on. It's what is it? When Churchill said it, may you live in interesting times. I guess he was talking to us.
Well, I think that was the old Chinese curse or something.
No, maybe that's it too. Yeah.
Well, the thing, you talk about them capping or putting the pressure on the metals prices. I think there might be kind of a race going on. There's kind of like a global war, a currency war, a geopolitical war, and all that. And I think that gold and silver are just kind of part of that. I mean, you see, like Putin is in Brazil right now, right? And they're working on this BRICS bank and all that stuff. And I mean, the point in all that is they're trying to get around the dollar. Right. I mean, basically.
Yes.
And I think that if the powers that be in Wall Street and the City of London can suppress the metals prices, then that kind of gives them more ammunition in their fight against the BRICS countries and so on. I mean, just roughly speaking, it's not quite that simple, but I think you get the idea is that if the prices of gold and silver were to go up a lot, it would shake the dollar confidence.
Oh, absolutely. That at its foundation, that's why it's been going on now for the better part of 70 years. This idea, it's always championed in the media and by the bank apologists that gold price suppression and manipulation is some kind of conspiracy theory, like Kennedy in a single bullet magic bullet theory. It's not conspiracy theory. It's historical fact. If anyone actually takes the time to learn their history, they will find that the price of gold has been suppressed, managed by the Federal Reserve and the other central banks aggressively, really, since after World War II, but even before that. Yeah.
I think I remember pretty clearly reading a quote in the paper from Volcker, Paul Volcker. He was asked about what he should have done differently in his time, and he said we didn't, aggressively attack the price of gold enough.
Yeah.
I think Greenspan. There's also a quote where he said something to the effect that the Fed stands ready to lease more and more gold as the price rises, something to that effect.
Exactly, and it's all one of the rationale behind that is to keep faith in the dollar and distract you from how much money that they're actually printing. No question about it. And in today's world, I believe I don't know if the cat was let out of the bag or what the right term is, but I've been talking all year at TF Metals Report about this guy by the name of Ken Hoffman, who's a senior mining analyst, metals analyst at Bloomberg Industries. So this guy is a real insider. A couple guys that I know in London have confirmed me. This guy is, I mean, he is as inside as it gets. And he was on Bloomberg television in December of last year, and just openly stated that what's really going to be interesting in 2014 is the fact that all the gold in London is gone. That it was 26 million ounces and it used to trade from me to you to somebody else, and that the vaults were stacked to the rafters with gold. And if you walk in those same vaults now, that's not there anymore. And that what happens if Western demand returns? Where are they going to get the gold? And that to me is the entire story about 2014. It's why the banks are sitting on price so hard, because, you know, gold is one of those, and silver too, is one of those assets that people want more of it when the price is going up. You know, they do that with stocks and everything else too. You know, when things are down, oh, I don't want any of that. No, give me something else. But when it's going up, they want more and more of it. And so all part of that suppression scheme this year is keeping sentiment down. Because if gold were to break out on the chart and be storming through 1,400 and 1,500 and 1,600, well, then, you know, there'd be lines out the coin shop doors again. And there'd be pension funds wanting to buy it, large investors, hedge funds, everybody else wanting to buy it. And then, as this Ken Hoffman guy said, the gold simply isn't there. So that's really about the biggest story in the metals in 2014. And then it's going to get exacerbated. It's only going to get more interesting in the back half of this year.
But you know, Turd, what's really kind of depressing, or maybe the word is frightening about all this, is the powers that be in the Western countries have really painted themselves into a corner in a lot of things, not just gold and silver, of course,
right.
But you know, like allowing trillions of derivatives that can't possibly be straightened out, you know, that kind of stuff. Yep. It's kind of like they're announcing to the world that we're bringing this sucker down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like, you know, are these guys mad? They're going to intentionally crash everything and pick up the pieces or something. It's just frightening, because what's the end game to having tens of trillions of dollars of derivatives that can never be straightened out?
Yeah, I think there are smart people that see this coming or are helping it along or whatever. But I think the vast majority of people that wrote all those derivatives or are still involved in the financial markets, I think a lot of them are just simply suffering from cognitive dissonance, you know, that they just can't believe that tomorrow won't somehow be just like yesterday. You know, it's like the folks that were in the World Trade Center Tower number 2 or whatever it was, you know, that they saw the plane hit the building. They could see the smoke and the flames and everything, but somebody came over the loudspeaker and said, well, stay at your desk. It'll be just fine. You know, and so they did. You know, they couldn't even think for themselves. And I think a lot of folks in the financial world are suffering from that same condition. They see, you know, the quadrillion. I mean, that's what, 1,000 trillion or whatever it is in derivatives that are out there, and all these problems that have just simply been papered over with accounting tricks. And they think, you know, I'm sure it'll just be, you know, just as fine next week as it was last week. And yeah, you're right. There's a day of reckoning that is assuredly coming. And really what you're doing, Paul, and what I try to do at my site, I mean, we're just simply trying to get people to prepare and think ahead and plan for it, because there's no avoiding it. I mean, what is unsustainable can't be sustained forever. And that's where we are.
Yeah, exactly, Turd. Hey, you know, it's kind of an irony here, but I was looking at your website, which is tfmetalsreport.com, right?
Yes.
And people can go there and get subscription information, and you've got a podcast and various other things there. But anyway, I was looking there, and you had an article by someone on the chess concept of Zugzwang, which is a compulsion to move. It's where every move you make ruins your position.
Yeah.
And I thought this was interesting because, you know, one of the top guys at the Fed, the Federal Reserve, is Ken Rogoff, who was a top chess player 25 years ago when I was a fairly serious chess player. And I just thought it's kind of appropriate that we have these mathematical whizzes all throughout the Federal Reserve or Wall Street or whatever. And they've made it, you know, this super hypothetical, calculated system in Wall Street. But at the same time, it's like they don't know what to do, or what do you do? Every move leads to collapse.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting article in there. And that idea of everything you do makes things worse, in some ways, does describe the current financial system.
It does. Was that one by Dr. Jerome, perhaps? I can't. I've got 4 or 5 folks that contribute articles to my site, and I think that one came from Dr. Jerome, who's a university professor and a really smart guy, and a good kind of survivalist prepper and metal stacker. And that's absolutely, that is a penchant of that, all the way down to, again, not to relate everything back to the metals, but a lot of people do that. They're, okay, the price has been managed lower for a number of kind of grand reasons over the last year and a half. But yet, how has that changed the big picture? I mean, how does that affect the rationale you used buying that metal and putting it in your safe 3 years ago? I mean, it shouldn't have anything to do with it, because none of the macro stuff, the macro stuff has only gotten worse. But yet everybody wants to make a move. Everybody wants to feel like they're, responding. Well, and that's often the worst case. And again, it's kind of a human condition, like that cognitive dissonance, I suppose.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, though, people psychologically want momentum. And so if the press hype, Facebook or something, then people want to go buy that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a total orchestrated pump and dump scheme,
right,
or something, they just and face it, the attacks on precious metals have been so severe for so long, particularly I think share prices, right? That it's really done a number on people. All I can say is I think have everything prepared, have food and whatever else you need, because this whole mess could blow up at any point.
Yeah, and, there is a bit of complacency too after whatever it's been now, coming up on 6 years. I remember thinking in 2009, well, this obviously isn't going to work for much longer, and then all of a sudden the calendar flipped to 2010 and we're still here, and 11 it flipped to, we're still here, and the Fed is printing money crazily. It's flowing all around the world economy, pumping up stock markets and asset prices and everything else. And I think there's a complacency that's kind of come in 6 years on, that people think, well, they can just keep doing it. Hey, I'm doing fine. My 401k is recovered,
but Turd, when you look at the history books, right, and you read about it, don't you get this feeling like you read about after World War I, and you just sit there and say, well, this is just a guaranteed tragedy.
Yeah,
no
question about it.
The way it played out, it had to lead to World War II.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And the way the economy went, it was kind of like entirely logical that it was going to lead to depression and fascism, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, but when you're living in it, it's hard, right? Because
it's hard to see it. Yeah, right in front of you. Yeah.
It's right in front of you, but also the timing. Is it 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? I mean, from the end of World War I. What was it? 20 years before World War II basically started, 22 years or something,
yeah.
Right?
Right.
But it was obvious by, let's say, 15 years that, it was coming. But, still, it's hard as an individual. What do you do? I mean, where do I live? Where do I put my money? Everybody can see these problems, but it's not easy to figure out what to do about it.
No, that's exactly right. And that's a good point. I mean, people will look back by 2040 and be able to connect the dots pretty easily, with all the benefit of hindsight. You're right. When you're in the middle of it, it's hard to make decisions with certainty. Again, I guess it just begs patience. It begs not to, what's the name of that chess move again? Yeah, not to feel the urge that, you've got to constantly be changing, or no, we know that this is going to end, that it's a mathematical certainty that this Keynesian experiment is going to come crashing down, whether it's next week or next year or 2020. So we just have to. The advice to everybody listening is you just keep planning and preparing, so that if it does happen next week or if it does happen next year, you're not caught flat-footed. You're not the guy. You're not. Let me put it this way. I remember seeing all kinds of documentaries in before 2005 about how the worst possible scenario for a landfalling hurricane in the U.S. would be for one to hit New Orleans. Oh, this would be terrible. Lake Pontchartrain would overflow. And I mean, it'd be the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I saw all kinds of things on Discovery Channel and Nat Geo and everything else about how, that would be the worst thing. But people still live there. And then when one did happen, 72 hours later, 48 hours later, there's still people sitting on the roofs of their homes, with signs, help me. So, I mean, the warning was there, but nobody was really listening to it. And that's kind of where we are now. I mean, what you don't want to be is somebody sitting on the roof of your house with a sign. You don't want to be the guy in line at the ATM trying to get cash out. You don't want to be the guy trying to storm into your local Costco trying to get food. If you know it's coming, if you know that the worst thing is this landfalling hurricane in your backyard, then you've got to be prepared for it to happen just in case it does.
If we could just discuss the mining shares for a minute, Turd.
Sure.
I think one of the unforeseen consequences of their war on the metals, they've essentially devastated the mining industry and devastated the exploration industry. And I think one of the repercussions of that is that it's going to lead to a decrease in supply. I was wondering what you thought about that.
No, there's no question about it. I mean, there are some chart reasons, there's some psychological reasons, there's a number of reasons why price was able to stop and reverse at $11.80 for gold and $18 for silver. Not the least of which is the cost of production. I mean, it got to a point where it was less expensive and far less of a hassle to just simply mine your gold or silver out of the COMEX or out of the LBMA. A lot cheaper to take delivery from there than it is to go deal with the EPA and unions and,
corrupt politicians.
Yeah. I mean, all that.
Hey,
I mean,
Turd,
yeah.
I hate to point out the obvious, but when you read that some kind of missile or whatever uses, X number of pounds of silver, it is real silver. It's not paper silver.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, when the rubber meets the road or something like that, exactly. Russian missiles do have real silver in them.
They do, as does every cell phone, and everything else, solar panel. So anyway, the moral of the story is they beat that price down as far as they go, and in doing so, the miners are, on average, down 75% from where they were a couple of years ago. There's a number of reasons as to why that happens, and we can kind of dissect a few of them if you want, but it'd take a little while. I mean, I think the main thing though that bugs me about it, that leaves me wondering from just kind of a grand scheme of things perspective, is if you're a banker, if you're a a bullion banker, just a trader, whatever, and you've got the ability to, this is coming. I mean, that gold and silver are going to be revalued in a significant part of whatever the new system is and all that stuff. A miner is essentially a bank going forward. I mean, if the money reverts back to being gold and silver and other hard assets, in some fashion, to some degree, then a miner is today's version of a bank. I mean, where today's version of a bank prints money, a mine prints money. And so I've always wondered if there isn't something behind the idea that a lot of these banks are driving the price down just so that the assets, the exploration companies, the folks that have the mineral rights and whatever, become so cheap that they can buy them on the cheap in preparation for what's next.
Yeah, I've wondered
Turd,
about that myself.
Turd, come on. We're talking about mostly America here, or the American vision of business in the world. And I think you have to look at it like the old robber barons. Competition is a sin. I mean, how did Rockefeller do business? You shoot or bribe or cut the oxygen supply off of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you buy everything for 5 cents on the dollar.
There you
and
go.
Then you have a monopoly, and then you charge far more than you should have in the first place.
Yeah.
And with that monopoly profit, you buy all the judges and politicians or whatever, and it's the way it goes.
If you're a senior company, and I mean, I'm not saying, I'm talking about Gold Corp or Barrick or whatever specifically, but if you're a senior company that at least can survive through all this, why not root for the banks to smash all these juniors so that you can go in and start buying them at, pennies on the dollar, basically, and fatten up your exploration pipeline? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons for why the miners are down so far. I don't really fiddle with them much myself. I know there's a lot of folks on my site that own them, that have been buying them all the way down, that have really bought them aggressively this year because the charts have turned up and the indices, like the HUI, the HUI, they look pretty good. And so there's a lot of folks that are in there getting them. And if they work, as we've seen, back in the 70s or even back in the early 2000s, if they're working, man, the leverage that you get out of those things, you make a lot of paper money.
You can also get a lot of bloody hands catching knives on the way down.
Oh, sure. You bet. It's just been it's been terrible. And so I've never been a big fan of. I don't really go around recommending them. I've been trying to get people to stay away from them, mainly just stack physical. But for those that like the leverage, that like the paper trading and stuff, yeah, we're probably at a point where they're probably they look pretty attractive again.
Well, Turd, I think you need to go to a place where they have real capitalism, like South Africa or Russia or something, China, where maybe the markets are not totally rigged.
What about the? I've been hearing a lot of talk and chatter about the price fix. What's your take on all that? I mean, I haven't followed it in depth, but I hear pros and cons about the fix going away. What do you think?
I think it's another media deception, if you will. I compare it to this. I was sitting I live in the U.S. I'm sitting here in my house one night on a Sunday night, whatever this is now, 3-4 months ago, and the television program 60 Minutes comes on, right? And the lead is the new book from Michael Lewis, who I've been a big fan of for years. He wrote a book called The Big Short, which, if you haven't read, details, just goes into some of the stuff behind the collapse in 2008. It's a great book. And so 60 Minutes story that night was how the new Michael Lewis book was going to talk about high frequency trading, algorithmic trading on the New York Stock Exchange. And his quote, his lead, to open the segment was, what people need to understand is the market's rigged. And I went, whoa, holy cow, somebody just said that on CBS TV. And so I get all excited, and I sit down, I'm ready to watch it. And he uses the term rigged, and boy, that week, did CNBC and all of the financial media go crazy with he actually used the term rigged, but he was using it in a very narrow context, and that was this kind of scalping of fractions of a penny as one order goes through, and gets resold 2 or 3 times before it gets to the actual person that was buying it. That's the rigging he was talking about. And I thought the rigging he was going to talk about was how, the market really is rigged. The Fed prints all this money. They give it to the primary dealers. The primary dealers take it and they bid up S&P futures, and buy the SPY and whatever it takes. That's where it's rigged.
But no, it might be quicker to talk about how it's not rigged.
Well, that's true. But that's the real story of the rigging. But what everybody wanted to focus on was this Michael Lewis thing, the HFT, as if the big rigging wasn't happening. So anyway, I tell you all this because that's what I think the PM fix discussion is, or the fix discussion is. Everybody's all up in arms. You got BaFin in Germany, you got the whatever they're called in England. Of course, nobody really cares here in the U.S. because it's all corrupt. But everyone, I got to do something about the fix. Oh, it's an arcane process. Oh, I got to fix the fix. And, and the silver fix is going away. Now they're going to hand it to the CME group of all people. But nonetheless, they got everybody focusing on this, whatever is in the right hand. This, yes, it's just what happens. It's just what happens at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock every day or whatever it is. It's not what happens the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of the day in the metals markets. Oh no, that's not anything. Don't look at that. We just want to. So I think it's anyway, long answer, but I think it's all the discussion about the London fix is mainly just a distraction away from the much more broad, excessive 24 hours a day manipulation scheme.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, it seems like a lot of the time when the metals get smacked, a lot of it's like after hours, right?
Well, that's their big trick, and they've done that forever, and it almost seems like it's gotten more pervasive as of late, but that just because I'm so sick of it. Every time I see it, it makes me mad. But that's their thing. The metals trade electronically 24 hours a day, but most of the action takes place when the COMEX is open in New York from 8:30 in the morning or 8:20 in the morning, New York time, until 1:30 in the afternoon, New York time. So what is that, 5 hours? I mean, that's when there's volume. That's when there's liquidity, though not as much as there used to be. But that's when there's an actual market. The other 19 hours of the day, the volume and the liquidity is maybe 10% of that. So what you're talking about the aftermarket smashes, that's when these banks can come in, and instead of having to print 2,000 naked shorts or 5,000 naked shorts to try to drive price in a certain direction, when there's only 10% of the volume of liquidity, they can do that for 200 contracts instead. Much more economical for them. It allows them to constantly be resetting price lower. It's James McShirley is an old time. He guy's been around forever as an analyst and post stuff with Bill Murphy at GATA, and he has always kept track of this stuff. And I just saw a thing from him said that over the last year alone, he's been keeping track of the opening trade at 6 o'clock Eastern every night on that Globex, because it closes for 45 minutes. Closes from 5:15 Eastern until 6 o'clock Eastern every weeknight. And in that first opening tick, he had it down something like 96% of the time, which, is statistically, mathematically impossible.
He's just lucky. He's just lucky, Turd.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. No, and what it clearly is these banks, again, immediately trying to set the tone so that there's no carryover, there's no momentum, from the earlier session, anything like that. It's remarkable. That is what they do. I mean, that's all part of the management and the suppression of price. It's right there in front of your face. And people that follow my site, whatever, we all know it. But nobody cares. CFTC doesn't care. The SEC doesn't care. I mean, it's just like how many bankers have been actually prosecuted and put in jail since 2008? None.
Are any of them alive? I think they're too busy getting killed off lately.
Well, that's a whole other story, I suppose. But anyway, the lawlessness is complete. That's, I guess, maybe a more societal question too. I mean, it's through all parts of government.
Well,
besides
Turd,
the
getting
markets
back
too.
to that post-World War I environment, I think the lawlessness resembles that, the breakdown of the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
You just have these powerful factions fighting each other, right? In other words, bankers end up dead, but nobody gets prosecuted because the law doesn't work at all.
Yeah, almost a mafia type situation. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's the world we live
that could
in.
get out of hand. Don't be surprised. it's getting warm in the room,
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that topic of shares, I don't know if you're a follower of the theory that a lot of essentially the trading locations like Wall Street have gone digital, right?
Right.
There are no shares anymore, physical shares. And along with that, a lot of people suspect that the number of supposed shares in existence has skyrocketed because it's hard to restrain them. There are no legal restraints anymore. Like you said, the SEC doesn't work.
Right.
I don't know if you agree with that theory. It makes sense to me. I mean, the standards are collapsing in all kinds of ways. But if that's happening in, Microsoft shares or something, it could easily be happening in Barrick or whatever. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it ties together. I mean, you're kind of in the ballpark of a number of different things. We talked earlier about high frequency trading. And a very simple example of that is, I put in to buy 100 shares of Microsoft. And frankly, I don't even know what Microsoft's trading at these days because I don't do that anymore. But say I put in 100 shares to buy Microsoft at 50 or at the market, and it's around 50. And what happens with high frequency trading is somebody front runs that, picks it off, buys it at 50 themselves, and then resells it to you at 50 and a penny. And you don't really know the difference. I mean, you just paid 50 and a penny, and that high frequency trader made a penny on your 100 shares, and they do it thousands, hundreds of thousands of times a day. That inflates overall volume, obviously. The volume on the New York Stock Exchange is already at extraordinarily low levels. If you removed that high frequency trading, and the exchanges like it because they're collecting a fee, a tiny fee on every single trade as well, so they encourage it. If you remove that little skimming move, I mean, that's 3 trades where there should have been 1. And so what's volume really on the New York Stock? I mean, what is it really? I mean, other than just a set of numbers that CNBC talks about and gets printed in the newspaper. That kind of gets to, and I guess where that then extends is it gets to Jim Sinclair's constant warning about getting out of the system and trying to get certificates for what you have. It then dovetails into why we own physical gold and silver as real sound money recognized for millennia, and why, this move toward a cashless society is bad. You see that come up every once in a while in the general media, that, what do we even need cash for? You can just swipe your card, you can get the mark of the beast, with a little card in your wrist or whatever, that just keeps track of all your debits. What do we need cash? Well, because if you don't have the actual stuff in your hands, it can be easily taken away from you in a keystroke. And so, anyway, that's kind of three things that come to mind when you ask me that question, because how do you know? And how would you know should the system collapse? How would you know? How can you claim? How can you show ownership to, not only your mutual fund or your 100 shares of Microsoft, but even just your bank account? I mean, these are all things that people have to be thinking about, not just from an economic collapse standpoint, but from a societal collapse standpoint, from a government collapse standpoint, from a encroaching tyranny standpoint. I mean, these are hard questions, but this is stuff that if you're responsible and really trying to look out for yourself and your family and your friends, this is stuff you've got to be thinking about.
Yeah, I just don't think we can trust any system nowadays. I think it's fundamentally too far gone in terms of corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can print out your bank statement or your, mutual fund or whatever, but push comes to shove, I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think they, go to the judge, go there. I mean, come on, people lose their houses where they've paid the mortgage,
Right. Except because there's 5-8 different banks that have the title. Yeah.
Right. Their criminality has better standing in court than your checks that prove you paid.
No question about it. No question about it. And again,
so that's one of the big selling points of hard things, gold and silver, or for that matter, lead or whatever.
Yeah.
Is
your
that
land?
Right, land or whatever. Is that push comes to shove, it's a lot harder to lose them.
Absolutely.
And some supposed ownership of 100 shares of Microsoft that's in a computer in New York somewhere. Okay, but what if there's some internet failure, or what if any number of things could happen, or even just
Right.
the bankruptcy of a company that supposedly owns things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they have cross ownership of all kinds of things nowadays. So it's just inherently a very unstable system that's been created, and that's just so frightening. By the way, changing gears slightly on this, what do you see coming? I mean, we've talked about all these strange things the last year or two. Where do you think we're heading in terms of, are there any concrete things you see on the horizon?
Well, there's no question that in time, if things are somehow, held together with all this baling wire and chewing gum for the next 5, 6, 8 years, there's no question that we're heading in the direction of the end of this U.S. dollar reserve currency system, this dollar hegemony. That can't and won't continue just simply because it's run its course. I mean, we've printed as much as we can. Reserve currencies come and go all the time. It's hard for people, the average person, to, again, getting back to that cognitive dissonance thing, it's really hard for the average person to even consider a world where the dollar isn't the reserve currency, because they've never lived in a world where the dollar isn't a reserve currency, right? I mean, it's been that way since 1945. And to understand a world where it wasn't like that, you're now like 100, right? Talk to my wife's grandmother, who's 102. She might remember what it's like. There aren't a lot of people around that are. So that is coming. Whether it happens gradually, or I guess maybe a better word is orderly, is ultimately the question. The creditor nations, I call them the dollar creditor nations. A lot of folks call them the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're all meeting next week in Brazil. They've now got their BRIC Development Fund, which is where they are parking treasury bonds and turning them into other assets, other currencies, so that they can build railways in Tanzania and all that kind of stuff. But it's a way to dissolve and get themselves out from under dollar assets like treasuries. Now there's the BRIC Foreign Exchange Fund that they're going to talk about and I guess unveil maybe next week when they're in Brazil. This is all headed in that direction. Whether the new reserve currency for the world is specific to a country or whether it's some type of special drawing right, I don't know. And again, that presumes some stability, something orderly. I think really the biggest risk, which would be far more chaotic, is something that's not orderly, whether that stems from a regional conflict that grows to a global conflict, or whether, who knows what it could come from, whether it's just a new financial collapse. I mean, how these central banks work, they just keep blowing bigger and bigger bubbles, and that's what they've done now since post 2008. Maybe when this next one goes, that's when things are disorderly. I don't know. That's the biggest fear, is that this change, which is most definitely coming, doesn't happen, in a gradual, orderly basis. But that's what most people need to be worried about. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I have my eye on, is the eventuality of this change in the global power structure. And again, the U.S. isn't going to go quietly in that. I mean, they're not just going to lay down and go, we really enjoyed this power. The politicians have really enjoyed this for the last 80 years because they can come up with whatever political plan they want, whatever handout they want, give it to their constituents on printed money from the Federal Reserve, and the constituents are happy and they reelect. We got people in Congress that have been there for 50 years, and they just keep getting reelected, keep bringing home the bacon. So the politicians, the ones that control the power, right? They're not going to just say, oh, you know what? Yeah, our time in the U.S. is done, so we'll just turn this over now peacefully. They'll come up with wars. They may be doing it as we speak.
Like in Ukraine, I suspect that a large portion of why that was instigated by the U.S. People can deny that if they want, but
it definitely was.
Yeah, I think that was to sort of throw a few flies in Putin's ointment in terms of the Eurasian Union and BRICS, right?
Right, and look at just the last year. About a year ago this time, there was this clear, I guess we'll call it a false flag thing, where they tried to claim that the Syrian government was using chemical weapons on their people. And Obama marches himself out and says, we can't have this. This is a crossing of the line, and now we're going to attack. And ostensibly, the rationale behind that was, the Saudis, who are the main supporters of this petrodollar system. And I suppose most people that are listening to us probably know what we're talking about. We can get into that if you'd like, but they support this. It's kind of a recycling of dollars for energy back into our treasury bonds. The Saudis are the biggest driver of that. If the Saudis want us to attack and get rid of Assad, we're going to come up with a reason to do it. So a year ago at this time, I mean, we're on the brink of what really would have been a disastrous war. And fortunately, Putin stepped in and kind of walked and gave a way for Obama to get himself out of it. Well, now here we are, not even a year later. And now those same rebels that were in Iraq or in Syria are now in Iraq. And that's all. And so now we're supposed to, and they're the bad guys bringing down Iraq. So now we're supposed to go against them. I thought we were in support of them a year ago against Assad, and all of this it's all theater, to me at least, all orchestrated, just like Ukraine, as part of this grander scheme to keep the U.S. Superior in terms of having that dollar hegemony. God only knows how much worse it's going to get. Again, the best thing that can happen, like I said, is it's orderly, that it's gradual and orderly. And by 2022, we have a new system. I think that's the least likely way it's going to happen, too.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to say on that. I mean, one is I think that actually this ISIS in Iraq, we only say we're against them. I think we're actually for them. But the bigger issue is for the last 20 years, you've seen the U.S. has now got a policy of blowing things up, right? Mm-hmm. We want to create failed states everywhere. I mean, Somalia, Libya, you name it. Yep. We just want to blow things up and call it victory. And it's victory because the mess can't be put together, and so it can't ally against us, right? In other words, if Somalia is collapsed, it can't really do anything by joining China because there's no Somalia.
Yeah.
And this is really basically, borderline immoral. I mean, to blow places up.
Yes.
For no reason, just to prevent them from ever developing, right? is not a very happy thing to be in favor of. But the other issue though is it makes all these other countries, like let's say Brazil or Argentina or whoever, it makes them very uncomfortable.
With us?
Yeah, because if your model is not development, right? Your model is we blow things up, and so you better do what we say, or maybe you're next, right?
Right.
Well, think about that.
We've been doing this now, for decades. The worst of it, though, has really begun since, again, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record or one-trick pony, but it goes back to the dissolution of the gold standard and the closing of the gold window in 1971. Because at that point, the dollar became completely unhinged, not tied to anything, and at that, the government ever since, and having the Federal Reserve provide the money to the government so that the government can just expand and do whatever it wants. All of that has now taken place in the last, whatever it is, 43 years, and now we're at the end of the road, and they're trying to defend that privilege as strongly as they can. Again, going around and starting wars, not only to distract the public, but it's a way of threatening anybody that dares upset the old order. And we're really playing with fire in this deal. Rather than being responsible 40 years ago, or even before that, being responsible with that privilege of being the reserve currency, we just pissed it away, for lack of a better way of putting it. I'm sorry to be frank, but that's what we did.
Turd, I got just a general thing. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., and I would just make the observation that the atmosphere and the kind of people you find in D.C. today is significantly different from, let's say, 25 or 45 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to say they've lost it, but there's I think you know what I'm trying to say. You had a lot more people that you may not like. You might disagree with all kinds of things. You might not have cared for Eisenhower or Kennedy or the people they had as Secretary of State or whatever. But somehow they had a lot more gravitas, or I don't know. Somehow, I don't know. Let's just put it this way. I think you could trust them being in the same room that your children are in.
Yeah.
Or something, or your money or something. I mean, it's just like they've lost, like I guess your point with the going off the gold standard, they've kind of lost all restraints. That's all I'll say. And it's just inherently dangerous to be like that. Hey, Jerry, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering what Turd thought about Jamie Dimon suddenly coming down with throat cancer. Is this just convenient? Do you think it's real? I mean, throat cancer, that might make it awful hard to talk if he's on trial or something, right?
My friend Jim Willey thinks it's all just a big ruse, that he's got contacts that tell him that it's all, that it's just made up, that it's giving him a way to step down and kind of walk away and out of sympathy. Oh, poor guy had cancer and now he's a cancer survivor and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's true or not. I do suspect, though, that it is. There is some funny business there, no question about it. Again, it's impossible to say one way or the other, though. But that wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't something made up. I've compared it to this guy that owned the Clippers, right? The Los Angeles Clippers. Remember that whole story?
Sterling, I think.
Yeah. Remember him? And he made such a jerk out of himself. And it took then he did an interview that made him look even worse. And then it took maybe about 24 hours after that suddenly the story was floated that he was in the early stages of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So now we got to cut him some slack. I feel bad for the guy and all that kind of stuff. Now he's not nearly the heel that everybody, not perceived as badly as he was. He's just an old guy with dementia. I think there's some of that involved in this as well with Jamie Dimon, that we're going to get. Anyway, that's just my hunch. He's a bad guy.
I think he's got cancer of the soul, maybe.
Yeah. His the ultimate arbiter of his actions, is going to get a chance to deal with him maybe sooner rather than later if he does have cancer. So he's got bigger problems than just me trying to figure out if he has throat cancer or not. He's got a few black marks on his record, that's for sure.
No doubt, yeah, and I'm half wondering if he's maybe worried he's on the list of bankers that is going to have the list of bankers that have had convenient accidents, like shooting themselves in the head multiple times with a nail gun or something,
the nail
right?
gun. Yeah, exactly. We'll see. I post on my site every once in a while. There's a scene from the last Batman movie, where like Gotham is this lawless place. It's like anarchy, and they're bringing guys in that that are bankers and stuff, and a guy's sitting on this made up throne of a desk, and he just asks guys, you want death or exile? And the option is you can either be shot or exile. You get to walk across the thin ice and fall into what would be the Hudson River. And I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but this idea of pitchforks and guillotines, that's a very real prospect for some of these people. When it finally hits home, what these politicians and the bankers have done to the let's call it loosely the American dream. God help them. I mean,
I've got an idea. Why don't we drop them in the center of Detroit and have a real live Running Man? The banker Running Man, starring Jamie Dimon.
Yeah, we could resurrect Richard Dawson from the grave and let him be the host, right? When he the host in the movie.
Yeah.
I talk about whether this will be orderly. That's the one thing. If it's disorderly, if there is some type of revolution, regime change type of thing, we're not looking at a peaceful thing. We're not looking at a second American Revolution. We're looking at something that would more resemble the French Revolution, perhaps, or the Bolshevik Revolution. That's part of human nature, that history. That's probably more what I fear is on tap ahead for most of these people. They don't want to. They would never admit it. They'd never see it coming because they're too busy living the high life and everything else that they do. But we'll see how it all sorts itself out in the years ahead, because all of these changes. Again, the only question is whether it happens gradually or not. It's definitely all coming.
Well, if you're a fan of history, you can see all kinds of similarities with past empires and past declines and whatever. But the big variable today is that so many people don't work in normal traditional things like farming or whatever, right?
Right.
Right. The whole system is a bunch of digits on a computer screen.
Well, and I am a fan of history, Paul, because I think it's assumed by a lot of people that we must somehow be smarter than they were 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. And because we have these
sitting in
gadgets.
front of a TV with potato chips and beer, we're a lot smarter than those.
Exactly.
People 100 years ago, reading books by a candle.
Right.
Sure.
And we have these neat gadgets that allow the three of us to be talking right now. So we must all be really smart. No, we're just simply standing on the shoulders of the accumulated knowledge and technology that's taken place over the last couple thousand years. That's all. We're not any smarter. So that's what you can learn from history, is that if we're all as smart, if not less smart than they were, then we're just going to make all of the same mistakes. And that's where history, repeats itself and rhymes and everything else. And that's, again, as you said, you can look back now at the period between World War I and World War II and go, well, geez, who couldn't see that coming? There will be people looking back 20 years from now and go, yeah, boy, you could see that wasn't going to work forever. And that's where we stand in 2014.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about ridiculous things, negative interest rates, unlimited quantitative easing. I mean, if you had said these things 20 years ago, a lot of the stuff that's in the front pages or the business pages of newspapers today, if you had said this was going to happen 20 years ago, they would have wanted to lock you up.
Sure.
You would have been a lunatic.
Yeah.
And now it's actually official policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the internet has a lot to do with that. People are awake now. Even though the media tries to control the message, there's so much alternative media now that people are figuring things out for themselves. And, that genie's out of the bottle. And that has a lot to do with it, too. It's like we said earlier, it's an interesting time to be alive. You know that things are going in a certain direction, but how we get from there to here is what's going to be the most interesting part, because that's what's unpredictable.
How do we get from A to B? Well, They had a few problems doing that in the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah,
They had a few problems doing that in the Russian Empire. You know what I mean? It's not
absolutely.
easy to go from like big overextended empire into a good future, you know?
Right, right. And most people are just so numb because they're either not educated or they're not paying attention or they're just too tired to pay attention. So all of this stuff is staring them in the face, and they just can't comprehend that things are going to be changing that dramatically, but they are. And that all we can do is what you guys continue to do. It's what I continue to do with my site. We just got to try to warn as many people as we can to help them prepare for this eventuality.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Turd, I think we're running up on your deadline here, so we want to appreciate your coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been fun.
And any last you want to tell people about subscribing to your reports and stuff like that?
Well, in the end, I'm really proud of the site, tfmetalsreport.com, because it's different. It's unique in the fact that people are actually there to help each other. You know, you go all over the internet's basically a cesspool of anonymous names, you know, and stuff. And people, because that they have an that anonymity allows them to be rude to each other and say things they never say to your face. But we really work hard at TF Metals Report to be, you know, the number one rule is to treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, that's what I tell my kids, because we're all in the same damn boat. And these politicians and bankers have screwed everybody. And so we might as well find a way to get along and help each other. And so that's what we try to do at TF Metals Report. And the site is collegial and friendly, and we're all trying to help out. What I also do, why I have a site in the first place, is I'm pretty good at analyzing the metals markets and changing direction and price targets and stuff like that. And so I also have a subscription component. It's only $10 a month. So, I mean, it's not like it's a deal breaker like some of these letter writers. But that allows me to pay the bills, keep the site up and running, because it ain't free. You know, you got to pay for servers and technical costs and all kinds of stuff. And so if you're interested in trading and really being active in acquiring metal, then you can sign up for what we call Turd's Vault as well. And like I said, it's 50 cents a day. It's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you again for coming. We appreciate it, and we wish you the best in your endeavors there.
My pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Turd.
Okay.
Give my regards to Blythe.
When I see her at dinner, I'll make sure I say hello to her for you. And again, anytime you want to do this again, it might be fun to do again, maybe at the end of the year or something, just kind of recap and see how things are going. Anytime you'd like me to come back, I'll be happy to do it, guys. Thanks.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye-bye. That's it. It's a wrap.